Nice.
Here we
Cool.
go. We're on.
We're on.
All right.
So, do you have an introduction? Do you want to introduce who you
No,
are?
yeah. No. Yeah,
No.
no. Yeah, no. Yeah, no. The
Yeah. No.
introduction is this. It's that I have this podcast, but I want to know how should I run this podcast. And so this is Clayton Weiss,
Hi.
uh, who's I'm biased, but I think this guy is amazing. So here we are. We're talking, and let's see where it goes.
Right on. Yep. And hello. My name is Clayton Weiss, but I go by Clay or Fuckface or Hey You. Uh, I it's just a label. So hello. What's up?
I take it you. It's good to have you on this this program.
So the topic and the topic in quotes and capitalized proper noun uh has been a topic. Like, what should our topic be has been the topic, which is interesting because it's not our first time talking with 3,000 miles between us, but it's our first time producing something. So the topic of the topic might be the topic today, if
I
that makes any
take that
sense.
word production or producing pretty lightly. It's like what we're doing here is we're recording a Skype conversation, and there ain't going to be no editing. Like, this is our
No,
production.
well, so from a professional standpoint, the term production can be specific, but it's also pretty broad in that it just kind of denotes a like a structure of sorts, and that structure can be intentionally loose, or as tight and controlling and anxiety producing as possible. But when I say production, like I would say, like, there's some common elements to a production. There's theme, which can or might not be adhered to. There's an audience in mind, even if it's a shadow audience, even if it's like this faceless, amorphous, gaseous audience who knows who they are. Maybe there's an audience in mind. Um, and there's also a bit more of a formal structure sometimes of the production. You and I sometimes just shoot the shit back and forth, and sometimes I go off on a big ass tangent. Whereas, something that's produced might be more give and take. Production's not specific though.
So let's get back.
It's a creation. We're creating something
Yeah,
together.
yeah.
Just
And
replace the word production with creation.
isn't that what it's about?
Yeah, creating. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what are we creating again? What's the topic?
Well, many have been discussed. The range of topics today has run from everything from, like, the value of drawings of dicks, because dicks are hilarious, uh, to people's reactions when they hear about my crazy life plans or your crazy life plans that neither of us think is that crazy,
Yeah.
while at the same time I can acknowledge that it's pretty fucking crazy. Um, we even talked about just discussing what is a podcast, and why. Although that's a bullshit topic, that's like if people were going to go see Hamlet, and all Hamlet and Ophelia spent the entire play talking about was, like, well, this is the first act of the play and this is the second act of the play. Like, that would be some boring shit.
So yeah, but
Yeah, but
you do have a background
I do. I
that
do.
that makes it to me like somewhat interesting to talk about. Like, what's a good way to interview someone? What
Okay.
is a way to do like a an awesome podcast? I mean, so can you talk
Sure.
about your background a little bit?
Absolutely. So my background, is, at least as far as media production goes, is I was a naval journalist for almost 10 years, 2004 to 2013. Um, and that was a really broad job description. I did everything from TV and radio production to public affairs and print media and photography to combat documentation. But I did spend a good amount of time as a TV news director and as a radio news director overseas. And I've done a bunch of stuff since getting out of the Navy. Did some contracting and some TV production as a contractor uh, for the Army for several years. So, what makes a good interview? A good interview, and I don't think you and I have a problem with this, is conversational. You know, like a really good interview is one where the two parties are obviously invested, or sometimes more than two parties, although, man, that could be a difficult interview because now you go cross talking shit. Um, but a good interview is conversational. A good interview is, and we were kind of saying this earlier, is organic. You know, it just kind of grows into its own thing. Like the interviewer, and you're in this case, you might have an idea for a theme, or probably does have an idea for a theme, but you know, isn't locked into it. Like that theme can evolve, and the interviewee hopefully isn't nervous about talking about it and being on camera or being recorded, and hopefully can get over the jitters, which I don't have a
Which
problem with
clearly
having
you're
done
having
this,
a tough time. You're
but a lot
clearly
of
having a
people,
tough time
yeah, I am. I
getting
am.
over the jitters.
I'm having a panic attack as we speak. But a lot of people do. A lot of people have a very hard time. You know, the camera is this like intimidating thing. It's like right there in your face, you know. So, you know, an interview is conversational. Um, Hopefully it evolves organically. Open-ended questions are good. That's one of those basic rules that once you get good at interviews, you can break it. Like a lot of basic interview technique is you don't ask any binary questions. You don't ask yes/no questions. But if you listen to professional interviewers, they ask tons of yes/no questions because they're good at leading into an open-ended question. You know, but yes/no questions tend to just, you know, basic yes/no questions tend to just get yes/no answers. So, you know, that doesn't do many
Stop
words.
an interview dead in its tracks,
Right,
right? Like,
right. Yeah. You know, so, you know, did you illegally contribute to campaign funds? No. Where do you go from there? You know? Anyway. But yeah, you know, and interviews can be as structured or as unstructured as the topic or theme uh you know, kind of requires. You know, a really formal interview might be with a head of state, you know, or a scientist, a subject matter expert on something. But informal interviews are great, and that, you know, they allow more expression and freedom of thought. You know, interjection by the interviewer or the interviewee. So as a long talk on my part right there, but yeah, you know, but
what do
usually
you
they,
what do you think? What do you say about something as basic as like, what do I look at? Right, we're on Skype and I'm on a computer.
right,
Like, do I look at your face? Do I look at my face?
right.
I look at the little dot that's at the top of the
Yeah.
screen. What am I
So
looking
like,
at?
so this is always one of those weird things with the technology, right? Because, you know, the camera is offset on a computer camera, you know, or a tablet camera like I'm using, you know, so it's very natural to want to look at the face of the person I'm talking to, but that results in my eyes, you know, to a viewer, you know, I'm not looking at that viewer. I'm talking to somebody like off screen, which can be weird. You know, if you look at like news interviews, they're never hardly ever looking at the camera, you know, but it's structured that way and it's kind of accepted that way, and it's a known format. Whereas in this, sometimes it's a little bit distracting and off-putting, and that actually distraction is a really key concept to avoid in video. So and that would count for a video podcast like this. Um, that would count for any video product. Um, Video, unlike print media, you know, print media, if you are reading a paragraph and you don't understand it, you can always go back. You can reread that fucker as many times as you want to. But video, TV, movies, radio is the same problem. You can't go back. You know, most of the time people listen to things either live, or they listen to it one time through, or they listen to a broadcast that isn't in a format where you can rewind it. Although, things on YouTube, that's becoming like, that's a function that you can do if you were watching it in a streaming format. But a lot of times, people can't rewind, or they don't rewind. So if they're distracted, if somebody's got an accent that's really thick, or mispronounces words, or speaks at a very, very high technical level, that using words or phrases or nomenclature that a common listener may not understand, those are all distractions where an audience member, a listener, or a viewer might miss what you just said. And in a lot of formats with video and with audio, you can't go back.
Yeah.
So distraction is an important thing to avoid, particularly in this format. Now, streaming, it's a little bit less of an issue because you can rewind on YouTube and whatnot. Sure. But basic, like, broadcast theory is like, you make it much less complex than you would with print media.
So, like, would that qualify as a distraction if I held the tonic water up to the screen while you're talking?
Only if we're not going to talk about tonic water. If we were talking about, like...
So we're not going to talk about tonic water.
Right. While we talk about tonic water. Right. We're not going to talk about it. If you and I were talking about metaphysics, and you, like, randomly were like, yeah, Nietzsche's theory on the meaning of life is that, the Ubermensch should be, like, really appreciated and should be, like, a leading figure, this would probably take away from what I'm saying.
But if we were talking about what you mentioned earlier as a possible topic, holding a
hot sauce.
Yeah, I'm looking for the word. A bottle shaped like a, what?
Like a dick.
Yeah, like a dick.
Oh, we're not. Are we being? Oh, are we censoring ourselves?
No. But I was looking for the other word. I was looking for. Isn't there a word? Say it again.
Phallic.
I almost said phalanged, and then I was like, well, that would count as that would be a distraction, because that obviously doesn't make.
Phallus.
Yeah.
Phalange. These are phalanges.
Yeah, and one of your phalanges has a little condom on it, it looks like. Yeah,
I sliced the fuck out of myself. Damn, I swear like a sailor.
Wait. Sailor. Which is going to go into our, you are a freaking sailor.
I am a sailor.
You're a sailor.
A couple different definitions of the word. I sliced this. Should I stop swearing? I could usually, I'll just pretend that there's a...
No, you know why this is hard? Because I'm in a classroom right now.
Are there students there?
Oh, no. No.
But you are in an environment where there are kids, which I like. When I'm coaching baseball, I won't say I've never sworn, but, like, it's easy to control because, of the role that I'm assuming as a coach. All right, yeah. I can probably control myself. I'll just pretend to be a 10-year-old.
No, we're not controlling ourselves here.
All right, that's good. Well, I should take my pants off then.
So the whole idea of, like, a word being a bad word is so fucking stupid to me. I have a really hard time with that. So, and here's our first tangent, right? We don't know what we're talking about anyway. Sure. But like, I have a hard time with that with, like, Brixton, who he's developing his vocabulary, and someone will be in the environment and they'll be like, shit, and then they'll be like, oh, I mean, and I'm like, what? No, it's cool. Like, we want to grow all of our vocabularies as big as possible. And then
I agree.
And then on and on and on, the conversation, I think, should be, like, as an intelligent person, kind of like what you said with the baseball coaching thing, like, you become a person who can wear different hats in different rooms.
Yes.
So you realize, well, in this space, I'm not going to use those words. I think that's intelligence, but I think the bigger our vocabulary, the better.
Absolutely. I think that's wisdom gained over experience and by example. I mean, as uncouth as I am in my natural state, I am a big believer in a time and a place for everything. I don't think emojis belong on a resume or in professional emails or correspondence. If a subordinate of mine, not that I'm a supervisor at the moment, but if a subordinate of mine used ain't or y'all in a official work document, I would, constructively instruct them that that's not appropriate. Same with the word fuck. That doesn't belong. That doesn't belong in any kind of official correspondence. So
I don't know why that makes me laugh so hard.
To the point where I'm a bit old school. It's like my old man on his front porch yelling at the skateboarders to get off his lawn, kind of thing. I'm kind of old fashioned in some ways, where I subscribe to the idea that formal speech has as much a place as extremely informal speech has its place. And I actually disagree with some modern trains of thought that promote informal speech patterns in formal settings. This is a good tangent. I was listening to a news story on NPR last week about how supposedly in America, certain cultural minorities supposedly are disadvantaged in the sciences and in math and in engineering, the STEM, yes. the STEM fields, because those fields tend to rely on formal communication. Mathematics is a formal language. Engineering is a formal language. Science is a formal language. Many, fields of technology require formal language. And so this news story, which usually I'm a huge fan of NPR, but this was a bit even too liberal for me. This news story was promoting the idea that informal language and frankly what I would call bad grammar should be an acceptable vernacular in these highly technical fields, which seemed really contradictory to me. These fields require, like mathematics is a language.
Yeah.
And it's a very formal language. It's a formulaic language. There aren't a lot of vernacular shortcuts that can result in workable equations. So to promote the idea of what I would call, again, bad grammar, English grammar in a field that is intrinsically requiring good grammar in another language, mathematics being this case, seems a little bit contradictory and, hypocritical. Anyway, there's my tangent. But yes, yeah, so time and a place, and maybe this is the place to say fuck. And if it is, I'm glad. I cut the fucking shit out of myself washing dishes. I also burned. Can you see it? Where is it? There it is. Burned. Oh, yeah. I'm flipping you off. Burned the shit out of myself baking bread yesterday. So my right arm's getting a beat down the last couple days. Yeah, I reached into soapy water, sudsy water, and my chef's knife, which I keep really sharp, was blade up. There's a tip, kids. Don't reach into soapy water with your chef's knife blade up. And I was like, nah! And I was like, ah!
Isn't that weird? Like sometimes I'll be scrubbing a knife at the sink, like scrubbing, food particles or whatever off of it with a scrubber, and I'll like look at it and I'll be like, that's a sharp knife, and I'm doing this real fast,
right?
Like scrub, like this serrated part, scrub, and like sometimes I'm like, wow, like if I just made one little slip, like I could slice my wrist.
Totally.
And then sometimes I do like cut my hand or my finger, and I'm like, wow. I don't know.
That was dumb.
Yeah.
Yep. You're living on the edge. There's a knife pun for you.
So you wait. So you have a sink and a kitchen? You live on a boat?
I do. I just sold my house. Got the check yesterday. Signed the documents last week. Just sold my house, so at least for the time being, and probably for the foreseeable future, which who knows, this might be a good segue into the whole conversation about crazy life choices.
Yeah.
I live on a 45-foot sailboat, and most boats have a galley. There's boat terminology, boat nomenclature for you. Most sailboats have a galley of some size. Mine is pretty well equipped. Everything on a sailboat, on a boat in general, unless it's like a mega yacht, which I can't, nor do I ever want to be able to afford. Everything on a boat is like compact, like slightly miniaturized, or maybe massively miniaturized. So it's smaller. It's a smaller kitchen galley area than one might find in most houses. Although one of my first apartments is pretty close to this size. But yeah, I've got a double sink. I got two sinks. That's the level of luxury that I'm experiencing.
Talk about your utensils. Do you have like a full range of utensils? I mean,
I do. So I learned the love of cooking and baking from my mother, and so and I had to pare down quite a bit when I moved from a house to the boat. I had to get rid of some tools. I like to think of it as my workshop. I had to get rid of some tools that I really loved and that were really useful, because a big ass KitchenAid stand mixer just is too massive for a boat galley. Although I am now kind of regretting it. I think I could have made it work, but whatever. So yeah, man, I got probably more tools even in my downsized galley than most folks do. Everything from a mandolin, which is not just a musical instrument. It's also a kitchen utensil for slicing things really quickly, really finely. Also slicing the shit out of yourself if you're not careful. I do that a lot. Lose some fingertips that way. Full assortment of knives. My dad got me a sous vide cooker earlier this year for my birthday, which I totally poo-pooed and thought was this dumb, trendy gadget. Tell you what, man, steak and meat in general has never been so tender. That thing is awesome.
Really?
Oh yeah, I use it all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, full range of utensils for the most part, but I've gotten rid of a lot of the power utensils that I had. No food processor, just takes up too much room, and power is an issue on a boat. Electricity is an issue on a boat. When you're out to sea, unless you have a lot of solar energy and a lot of wind energy to produce your own electricity, you got to run your engine to produce electricity, which sucks and is loud and burns fuel and is not fun. Sailboats want to sail. They don't want to have an engine running. So I got rid of a lot of my power utensils and tools. No food processor, no stand mixer, no cake batter stirring thing with the two prongs and the spinning. Got rid of that.
That's a fun thing for me with having
sex. No, oh, sorry, it's wrong. No, probably not good for sex.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't think it would be.
A little bit.
I don't know. It could be. I'm not the person who would decide whether that's fun or not.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. You would not, probably not the recipient of that.
It's a hell of a lot of fun with a young family though, and a almost 3-year-old in the kitchen. I mean, that's a fun little toy.
I mean, like I said at the beginning of this, I learned from my mom, and I've got a lifelong love of cooking and baking from her. Awesome. Yeah, I think children. I think cooking. When I was married, I was a stepfather of 2 boys for many years, and I tried to include them in cooking as much as possible, because I think it's one of those primal things that brings people together. It's on the hierarchy of needs. Food is pretty high priority, and the sensory experience of food, smell and taste and warmth and color can really create satisfaction. I think doing that together can create some pretty permanent and wonderful bonds as a family. So I tried to include my boys in cooking as much as possible. I threaten them with large knives frequently as part of the growing and learning process. I thought that was important.
Is that something, including young people in the work of us adults? Do you think, generally speaking, that's like a great move as for
threatening with knives? I mean, I think fear is a healthy thing to learn. Plus, you got to establish dominance. Kids are like little velociraptors, man. You know, like you got to get in their heads and let them know who's boss early on, or else they run shit. And that can't have that. So, are we talking about threatening with knives or cooking together, or both?
Just everything, right? Like every activity, everything we're doing. I don't know. I feel like the Western culture is really good at saying, "Oh, you're a kid. Go off and do your thing. Go off and play with those whatever over there, and we're not going to include you in the way we live our life." And I don't know. I kind of have this general feeling or sense that kids don't learn how to be people.
I agree with you. I think Western culture is really good at building barriers. You know, we're really good at creating labels which separate, which differentiate. You know, you're a child, I'm an adult. Well, those are, in many people's minds, those are mutually exclusive things, even though they shouldn't be.
Right.
And many, the connotations of child and adult are almost opposites. And that creates a barrier. I think it's more of a function of modern Western culture than just Western culture. Although Western cultures focus on consumerism and buying things, and the acquisition of wealth certainly doesn't help. But I remember several years ago listening to some podcast or probably a show on NPR about the nature of childhood, even 100 years ago or 200 years ago versus today.
Huh?
The idea of having a childhood is a really not just like last 500 years, like last 100 years. A childhood is a modern concept. Children didn't really have what we know as a childhood, except for maybe the ultra rich. I mean, like the 1% of the 1%. There wasn't this carefree time of play and lack of responsibility and free time up and until the 20th century. So as far as including children with everyday life and experiences of an adult, that was probably, not probably, that was definitely happening up until the 20th century, because children, you needed help in the kitchen, or you needed help with the crops, or you needed help with the house maintenance, or the horses, or the slaves.
They're not little adults, they're little people.
Right.
They're little humans.
Right. They were members of the family.
They're human beings.
We're all that word family versus child and adult. Family's this inclusive idea. Family's this inclusive group noun, whereas you're a child and I'm an adult are exclusive labels. Yeah. So up until the 20th century, children were members of the family, and all the warm and wonderful things that went along with that, along with all the, you're getting up at 4 a.m. to milk the cows and muck the pigs and clean your mom's butthole because she's paraplegic because she fell off of the horse. Like that's like, she needs your help.
Whatever it might be. You're
be
involved in meaningful activity.
Yeah.
Whatever you
survive the winter, Johnny or Susie, unless you darn them damn socks, or unless you pluck that goose. Pluck that goose. Anyway.
So I love that, because I also think that the play part is so important to learning, to everything, to development, not just for young,
modern, though. That's
not just for young people, but for us too. But I guess the thing that really irritates me is when play is like this structured, this thing where there's a bunch of rules and adults around, which I think messes it up, ironically. So I think that I guess my personal stance, at least right now, is that young people should be included in everything that we think is meaningful. Although I also think they should also just be left alone to play and wonder and explore and all that.
And let me add to that idea. Young people should be included and left alone, and older people should include ourselves with young people. You know, we are at a point in our evolution where we have the luxury, at least many people do, uh, have a luxury of free time. Hold on 2 seconds. I gotta stop my dog from chewing on himself. Hank, cut it out. Not healthy. Um, and although we have a choice of how to pursue at free time, and sometimes it's not constructive, which is fine. We have this evolutionary opportunity as adults with free time to get back to learning how to have fun and play. Play just like centuries ago. Work wasn't just for adults; it was for everybody in the family. Now, play isn't just for kids; it can be for everybody in the family. We have this opportunity, really only in the last 5, 6, 7 decades, that we have the luxury of enough free time, if one can afford it, to explore that idea of including ourselves in the mindset and then in the time and the experiences of young people, because young people, they don't need to be taught how to play. We need to relearn how to play.
Yeah.
A lot of times. A
Yeah.
lot of times.
Yeah, and isn't that where it's at? I mean, isn't that where some of the learning is at its highest? And not that it's about that, because it's not about that, but it just happens.
What I think is cool is that if an adult today tries to maintain that philosophy of the importance of play throughout his or her life, that adult can develop their play into higher and higher stakes play. And I mean, what immediately jumps to mind maybe is some riskier things like rock climbing or sailing, or mountain climbing or spelunking, free diving. But a lot of those activities don't necessarily have some kind of like economic value to them unless you're like a professional whatever getting sponsored to do whatever. A lot of those activities are just for the sake of the activity, because it's fun, because exploration is fun, or because the challenge is fun, or because surmounting this obstacle is fun, or diving deep is fun, or being scared and overcoming that is fun.
Feels good in some way. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like that's the cool thing about an adult, is that if you keep play important in your life, you might just be able to start playing at more and more higher risk but higher reward pursuits. Like surfing or free diving or whatever, spelunking.
So this just sounds like a perfect way to jump, not even unswimmingly, but right into how do you play? And you are a sailor. Yep. That could be part of this answer, I guess. But
sure.
Where does play surface in your life? Because you're certainly a playful dude to me.
So everyday play, I still try to incorporate at the lowest level, at the simplest level, low risk play. Low risk, low reward, but not really low reward, just easy reward, like walking my dog. Walking my dog barefoot off the leash while I've got some music playing on my phone, and I'm like dancing around to it down the pier. That's like everyday play for me. That's like I gotta have that. A little bit, at least a little bit in every day. It's easy, it's immediate, takes no time. I'm doing it anyway. Walking the dog could be drudgery or it could be a blast. So let's make it a blast.
Yeah.
Higher risk play, man, I wish I could turn this into an everyday thing. And, I do plan on it making it a more common thing. But a higher risk play would be like sailing. Last year, I was able to get out almost every weekend of the year. This year, been much more limited due to getting ready for some major life changes. But that's a higher risk play where you've got to have a certain skill set. You've got to be willing to accept a lack of control, higher risk of physical damage, or even economic damage if your boat, which right now is also my home, gets hurt. But the rewards are worthy of the level of risk. The reward of sailing. I mean, you have to like sailing to do it. To get that reward, obviously. But the rewards of sailing, to me, I haven't found a limit to it yet. It's exciting, it's thrilling, it's challenging, extremely technical. It's extremely. I mean, it's on the level. I was just talking to a buddy today about this. It's on the level of learning how to fly a plane. Pilots go to school for years. Sailing, there is school to go to, but almost nobody does it. But it's almost the same level, or I would say it is the same level of technical difficulty. Being out in the elements, being soaked by spume off of white cap waves, mastering, heavy seas, getting from point A to point B is not an easy thing. Just that is difficult. Getting the most speed out of your sails, which is really difficult. You've so many different factors: wind, the physics of your sails, cross currents in the ocean. I mean, a billion different variables. That's just really. I mean, a lot of people would think of that as, man, that sounds like a lot of work. Holy shit, that sounds like a lot of work. You got to learn all this shit. You got to do all this shit. But really, it's just incredibly. I mean, if you're into it, none of it's work. It's all really exciting and challenging.
Well, and talk about being one with all of it. I mean, really connecting with nature. I mean, this is a transportational at its core. Like sailing to me, and I'd love for you to speak to this. Like, it seems like you're really just you're playing with nature to do something you want to do.
Absolutely. So it is playing, and nature is absolutely your playmate in this. It is a partner. Mother Nature is a partner. The sea and the winds are a partner in your play, but they aren't. What would they? They're a partner that can quickly become an adversary. So and this really speaks to like higher level play.
Yeah.
It's really easy to play with something or somebody that's always your friend and it's always on your side and always on your team.
Yeah.
Never going to drag you down.
Yeah.
It's really easy to play with my dog. My dog would never turn on me. He's a good dog. But that has less dimension. That play with my dog has far less dimensions to it, far less complexity to it than play with and out in Mother Nature. So I would say the act of sailing is play, but it's also adversarial with your environment. A lot of times it's adversarial. One of my favorite quotes from a World War I sailor, a submariner, is something to the effect of, you can do everything right absolutely all the time and you might come back alive. And I like that because it's for a lot of reasons. It speaks to a lack of control. It speaks to a challenge, which I find invigorating. It speaks to it's a challenge to man's ego. It challenges the idea that man is supreme. We're not. We're absolutely not. But at the same time, we can harness the winds and the water to get where we want to go. Maybe, probably, possibly.
It almost seems to me like a judo. or like Taoist, like
It is.
in some ways. I don't know.
I mean, you might be able to speak to why or that relationship a bit more, but I think the relationship, because it is a relationship, the relationship between a sailor and the sea and the winds, um, is paramount and is the key and the core of that activity. And that, I mean, maybe that's what you mean by Taoist or judo in that, it requires a relationship with another force. I'm not sure, but that speaks to me for
Yeah,
sure.
it's not me and you
Right.
having this podcast. It's us.
It's
It's
us.
just this thing happening. It's podcasting. It's
Right.
conversationing.
So the extra element, the difference, I would say, sometimes you can say, I'm one with the sea or I'm one with the wind, and we're doing something together. But many times it's me against the sea or against the wind. I mean, if Mother Nature is throwing everything she can at me that to kill me, I ain't gonna say, yeah, let's do that. I'm gonna say, not today. I mean, she might
Yeah.
get the better of me, but I'm gonna try and say not today. So the difference between that relationship and our relationship is you and I are in this together. Like, we want this podcast and this conversation to be everything, and neither of us is gonna say, is gonna corrupt or sabotage this thing, this production that we're creating. But like I said, sometimes the act of sailing is an adversarial one, but that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, and it's not like nature's against you, is it? It's more just that it's totally indifferent. Is that a better way to put it?
Oh, no, I love that because it's a paradox. It feels very personal sometimes. When it's your life
Yeah.
and or your boat, which many sailors become very attached to their boats, um, and that's a relationship. At least to us, at least to me, that's a much more profound relationship than I ever had with a house. Um, Sometimes it feels personal, even though I would agree with you that nature is indifferent, and even if I'm Socratic enough or agnostic enough to say I don't think that nature is sentient in any way that we understand it to be, but maybe it is in some way we don't understand it to be. But even if it is or if it isn't, it's certainly indifferent. It certainly doesn't give a shit about me as an individual, which is also comforting in a way.
Yeah.
Um, but it also feels very personal, and that's paradoxical. It feels personal when it's your life or your boat, and every fucking wave is trying to capsize you. And it's not that it's trying to capsize you specifically, it's that you happen to be there at risk of it, but it feels
Yeah.
personal at the same time. It's this wonderful paradox.
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
and when that wave finally does swallow us up,
Oof.
because the wave's going to swallow you up and it's going to swallow me up, maybe not on the ocean, but in some way. It's not
Eventually.
like it's not like it's good or bad. It's just something that's happening, right? It's just another element.
Inevitable. It's
Yeah.
inevitable.
Yeah.
And that's a comforting thought. Entropy and the inevitability of demise, to me, is very comforting. Not in a I want to die sense of the term,
Yeah.
but just as a reminder that nothing is permanent, everything is transient, everything is changing and changeable and evolving and consuming everything and shitting everything, and everything's constantly excreting and decaying and renewing and
Yeah.
reformatting.
Yeah.
And I find the impermanence of everything other than change. I mean, impermanence is the only permanent thing. Very comforting. It means that no matter how shitty we are, or I am, or some bad person is, or a situation is, ain't gonna last forever and doesn't really matter. And just the smallest grain of sand on the smallest grain of sand on the smallest grain of sand in the universe doesn't really matter, and I find that very comforting, very comforting.
Do you remember in your life when it went from, because it did change from I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and then I'm learning about sailing. I'm becoming a sailor. Like, I don't know if it's possible to go back and know the
Oh, I
exact
mean, I
time.
can
You
pin
talk about.
down. I can pin down the specific draw to sailing and evolution. I can definitely timeline and chart my evolution as a sailor, but I would also say that it was an evolution of a more broader interest and greater interest. Um, I stumbled on sailing really as one of those things I always kind of meant to do and had some opportunities to get into and just never did. And then a very, very close friend of mine who has been a sailor for many years longer than I have bought a boat and he started living aboard and we'd go sailing. And I was like, oh, this is awesome. This is a lot of fun. This was several years ago, like 2010. So like, I'm out on the water with him. And then, so I kind of piqued my interest. And then I got into racing because I wanted to learn more about sailing and the technique and the strategy and the theory behind it. So I got into racing because the way I figure it is something that is competitive and high stakes and demanding is usually, if you can hack it, a shortcut to learning faster. And sure enough, it was. I started racing, and within the first year of racing, I had probably learned 10 times the amount I would have learned if I had just, bought a boat and tooled it around myself, or even gone to sailing classes. And by the second year, and by no means am I even close to a journeyman sailor, maybe a journeyman sailor, but nowhere near a master of this at all. But after 2 years, like, consider myself proficient enough and have proven it where I can sail by myself on a 45-foot boat, which is bigger than the boat that I was crewing on, with 13 other people. So like the timeline for actual, sailing specifically is easy to chart, but it was part of a bigger fascination and a bigger evolution. Coincidentally, the same friend that got me into sailing got me into free diving many years ago, like 2005.
Yeah.
And that's probably where it started. This love of the sea and this love of danger and this love of being out in an element that is foreign. We're not made to be underwater. Nor are we. I mean, we are land creatures. We are not. We're bipedal. We don't have webbed toes, even though that would be awesome. We have lungs, not gills, even though I would love to have gills.
By the way, real quick, Shaylin, her toe, one of her toes is almost joined with another toe. So she kind of has a little webby thing going on both feet.
She's a mutant. I like it. She's higher on the evolutionary ladder than we are.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
That silly movie with Kevin Costner, Waterworld. I totally want to mutate into that dude. I want to be able to breathe underwater. That was always an easy answer for me about what superpower I would like to have. It's easy. Breathe underwater. It's easy. Underwater is really fascinating. Anyway, so free diving, coincidentally, that same friend of mine, this guy John, got me into free diving when we were stationed in Greece together years and years and years ago, and that's where I fell in love with being in a hostile environment. Not mastering it, but mastering it to a point where you could exist in it somewhat, where you could function in it somewhat. That was a challenge and fun to overcome. Being part of something bigger than you, being exposed to an element that's completely hostile to you. Everything in the ocean wants to kill you. The ocean is like, it does. Seriously. Everything in the ocean, everything down there is either being eaten or eating. You know, everything wants to kill you. No hyperbole. It really does. You know, the ocean, nobody's friends with anybody else in the ocean, except clownfish and anemones. They're friends. I'm sure there's some symbiotic relationships down there. Beyond that, but for the most part, everything wants to kill everything else in the ocean, and that's exciting and fun, even though it sounds silly and extreme. And so it probably started there, and then sailing was just an evolution of that. You know, being out in an element that's challenging and difficult and uncomfortable.
In some ways, when we go into the ocean, like you're experiencing this total love and immersion into the ocean life. Are you going back in some ways to where we came from?
It's primordial.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's primordial, and that's invigorating. You know, there aren't, and this is similar with sailing, whereas you don't have this facade of safety when you're underwater or when you're sailing. You're faced with your mortality right now, you know, right in front of you. Every decision you make, you know, do I fuck with that jellyfish? That could be a mortal decision. You know, do I go poke my head into that hole over there in the coral? Can't tell you how many moray eels I saw popping out of coral and rock holes, you know, in the Mediterranean when I was free diving around Crete. You know, so every decision is a mortal decision. Can I hold my breath that long? Should I go this deep? You know, and sailing's the same way. Should I go that far out from shore? You know, is my equipment in good condition? So yeah, it's very primordial. You know, you're not armored by the luxuries of evolved modern life where we feel insulated from our own mortality, and then our mortality becomes this foreign, terrifying thing to us, you know, we can't deal with. Not that I deal well with the idea of death, you know, but you know, it's really easy to feel warm and safe and like nothing's going to go wrong with your 72-inch big screen TV in your centrally heated or air conditioned house that's insulated from the noise of your neighbors, and it's snowing outside but you're warm, or it's 110 degrees outside but you're cold. It's really easy to, you know, feel safe. And sailing and diving, there is no safe. And yeah, it's much more primal. It's much more primal.
Well,
You
so
feel much more like the hunter on the savannah, you know, where, you know, there might be a lion in that tall grass. You don't fucking know.
most people who might think what you're doing is unadvisable,
Sure.
not sane, yada yada yada.
Oh,
Are those people who are living in those comforts probably?
Yeah, lots of
Right?
people do. Although, you know, people die doing it as well every year. But I mean, we haven't even gotten into the crazy part yet. Like, I plan on you know, single-handing the globe. I want to sail solo, you know, and circumnavigate the world, go across the Atlantic, you know, by myself. Although, you know, I might have a friend on board or I might not, but I want to and I'm willing to do it by myself. That's where people start going, you're fucking nuts.
Yeah.
You know, even though many people have done it.
Yeah.
People have crossed the Atlantic in a bathtub, which is crazy. Doesn't sound like much fun, but people have done it. You know, they've actually, you know, I know of at least specifically two British dudes who rowed across the Atlantic Ocean in a bathtub in like the 50s or the 60s. You know, like,
what would compel someone to do that?
What's that?
What would compel someone to want to do that?
I mean, you know better than anybody. You're obsessed with challenges. The challenge of the thing. You know,
yeah.
One of those guys went on to participate in the first ever solo nonstop around the world sailing race. He didn't win. I think he was one of the few people who finished. But you know, he figured, hell, if I can row across the Atlantic Ocean in a bathtub with one other dude, I can sail around the world by myself without stopping. And he wanted to try it. He wanted to challenge himself.
Was there something you could add to the challenge, as if it's not a challenge enough? but other people have done it. Is there something that you could make it even more unique or more personal?
Well,
Or is it
so
already that? I mean, it's.
I think, and this is not like an accusation or criticism, just an observation. I think you are more motivated by the nature of the concept of challenge than I am. I like to do challenging things, and I like things to be challenging, but I don't like to do things just for the challenge of them. Like there has to be for me some other intrinsic value to it. Like I really like sailing. I really like the physical aspect of it. It feels good to me. It's beautiful out there. So there's beauty and intrinsic beauty in the sea and in the sky. Um, there's poetry and adventure out there in the noises and the animals and the solitude. And all of those are intrinsic values that are separate from the challenge of it. It just also happens to be challenging, which I like. But I'm not one that seeks to make already challenging things more challenging for the sake of challenge. Like for example, depending on winds and depending on the speed of one's sailboat, somebody can cross the Atlantic in several weeks, anywhere from 3 to 5 or 6 weeks. I think the current record for a race boat, the world record, like 9 days or something like that, maybe 5 days. I mean, this boat was hauling ass. This was a boat that's like 10 times as fast as my boat or something.
Okay.
Anyway, but so the idea of doing that by myself, could I make it more challenging than it already is? Sure, I could try to do it without sleep. Why?
But you're saying who cares? Because what you care about, and I actually, I'm there with you, because it's like the meditational aspect, the conversational aspect, the it feels good aspect, like that's there. It's part of the deal already. Like, I mean, for me, the challenges are that it's a chance to kind of lose myself, so to speak.
Absolutely.
And so the speed at which you're going doesn't have anything to do with that.
Not necessarily. I'm just saying, you asked if there was anything I could add to it to make it more challenging, and my answer is, no thank you, Turkish. I don't need any sugar. I'm sweet enough, to quote a good movie. What I've found in life is the wonderful one of the wonderful things about the human experience is that it seems like the more rewarding an experience is, the more complex an experience is, the more challenge there's challenges built into it, already that our most rewarding and most complex positive experiences typically aren't easy. So many times the most beautiful flower is one that is difficult to grow. Like orchids are difficult to grow, and I realize beauty is subjective, but it's just an idea.
Sure.
Or the place to catch the biggest fish, let alone the act of catching that fish is remote, and the act of catching that fish is difficult. So to get the biggest fish is a challenge in of itself. The biggest fish is never going to be the easiest fish to catch. So the wonderful thing is that if one likes challenge already, which I do, then rewarding experiences tend to already have that challenge built into them. And of course, one can always make things more challenging. Choosing to do long voyages single-handedly, solo, pretty fucking challenging. Like the kind of typical way that most people do it is like when they're crossing an ocean single-handing. That's the sailing term for going solo. They're crossing an ocean single-handing. They sleep 2 hours at a time. They're awake 2 hours at a time, 2 hours down, 2 hours up, 2 hours down, for as long as the voyage takes. So that sleep pattern is very difficult to maintain. So that's challenging enough. let alone just the fact that you're by yourself having to deal with all the shit that's going on, whether it's wind and waves and cold, the potential for being hit by cargo ships or by whales. That happens, not frequently, but it happens. There have been instances where a sailing boat, a sailboat, has been hit by a whale, and put it this way, the whale doesn't lose that fight. The whale doesn't lose that fight. The whale's not the one that goes ouch. The boat suffers in that battle. So it's got built-in challenges enough where all the intrinsic rewards, beauty, the poetry, the experience, are augmented by the built-in challenges that are already there. So I wouldn't add anything. I still want some hot food and a nice soft bed and a comfortable cabin to come into, from the cold. I'm not going to be like, I'm going to sail across the Atlantic and not eat. that's I don't need that challenge. I'm not going to fast my way across the Atlantic.
Well, yeah, right. And having a warm bed, having your ability to make bread, which I hear you're a bread maker, and
I baked yesterday.
Like isn't that the greatest challenge ever? No matter what we're doing, like to be able to do it with this attitude of this is exactly what I want to be doing. I mean,
it takes, not like talking myself up here, but just a statement. I think it takes courage to pursue a difficult and rewarding life endeavor. I think complacency is a lot easier. I think comfort's a lot easier. I think going like, I'm just going to work this 9-to-5 job and pay my mortgage, and watch my Monday Night Football. I think it's a lot easier, and therefore a lot less effort, a lot less risk involved. So I do think that there is some courage required to undertake something that is uncomfortable and risky. I think just that choice itself is a special one to be able to make, to have the luxury of making, but also to have the courage to make. This is judgmental, but that is what it is. I don't see a lot of people choosing.
What turned you into a person who makes that choice? I mean, because
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure. I don't know if it requires like a psychoanalysis all the way back to like, my issues with how does one feel about your mother? Like, I don't know if it requires psychoanalysis to go back to that. I don't. Maybe it was reading Hemingway and Steinbeck and Robert Heinlein and reading these authors that I respect and enjoy that were advocates for adventure and advocates for alternative lifestyles, and advocates for reaching for something out of the ordinary. I think I'm burdened with a certain degree of self-awareness, which sounds incredibly full of myself and egotistic, but it is. And that is what it is.
Yeah, what hubris.
Right. Yes. Oh, I'm soaked in hubris. Bukkake of hubris all over my face. Fucking big old facial of hubris. Yep.
So because I put a timeline on our first, we can call this part 1, I think.
It's called
part
one.
We'll make that time will come here in a few minutes. But you're mentioning things that I feel like are going to become part 2. Like, like for example, you mentioned stuff you've read, and you write. you
I
said
do.
you have a journalistic background in some
Yep.
ways in the military. I mean, you've done a lot of writing, and I I'm biased. You're a good writer. I mean, you know how to
Thanks.
put things together, and I'll say this even just from the text conversations we've had. It drives me crazy to have a text conversation with someone who is clearly not putting time into what they're writing.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
it's like, why are we talking then? Because
Yep.
this is a form of communication, and if you're clearly not putting time into it, and you're abbreviating all these words, and you're using emojis, and you're really just, this is not a conversation. This is just a
Yep.
slop fest.
Yep.
But with you, I get the impression that everything you write matters, and it matters what you write, and I love that. And so anyway, and you're also working on a book. I heard you told me at some point.
Yeah, I'm working on a project.
And I feel like that would be a great part too. Like, tell me about your writing, tell me about all that, and let's talk.
Yeah, well, at some point, my suggestion would be part two um, might, might be more about talking about like your crazy fucking plans too, since
I don't have anything.
I'm not fascinated with myself. I'm fascinated with other people. I got to live with myself, so like sometimes myself bores the shit out of me. Um, you know, but part two can be about whatever you want it to be, Bubba. But my suggestion would be is maybe we also talk about maybe some of the compare and contrast, of what I talked about, what you think about challenges and life and play. I know you and I have talked about how a lot of times, like I like to quantify relationships as a Venn diagram, and
Love. Yeah.
you and I share a lot in that pussy shaped middle portion right there. But there's things that we don't that are probably outside the pussy, you know. And I'm always curious to know about the contrast. It's easy.
Yeah.
It's easy to talk about things we agree about,
And like.
It is. And like, yes. Yeah. So hey, part two can be about whatever. We haven't really touched on the efficacy and importance of dick jokes and dick drawings at all. So, that might be part 7, I don't know, or part 4, but part 2 could be about me some more, could be about you some more, could be about me rubbing my dog's head while I'm talking to you, could be about,
Or what is he rubbing?
I'm rubbing his head right now.
Yeah, it just looks like you're rubbing something. I mean,
I am. Well, his head is in my crotch, so like it probably looks like I'm rubbing, some lower extremity of my own, a phalange to come full circle. A phalange of my own. We haven't talked about Castle Butterdog,
Yes.
Camp Butterworth.
Yes.
Archipelago
Yes.
Butterdoggy Archipelago. Lots of topics. So
yeah, is this going to happen before, after your sailing trip around the globe? This is kind of I look at this as a create along the way conversation, not just this podcast, but our life together.
I look at life as a create along the way kind of thing. Like you start out with a plan, but the best laid plans of mice and men oft go awry, as some famous poet said, or John Lennon said, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. I'm planning on some big around the world sailing trip that could take me a year or 5 years or forever. But in the meantime, who knows, maybe I'll fucking decide, shit, man, I need to sail south and go through the Panama Canal and sail up the West Coast and meet David Butterworth and Clan Butterdog, and we need to start our cult and up in British Columbia or San Juan Islands in Washington or wherever. And yeah, man, life is all about creating along the way. You plan, and then you throw those plans out the window.
Yeah, and I do want to. Yeah, exactly. I want to keep this mostly about you. You're such a fascinating character. Are you a figment? Boring. I don't even know if we want to go there, but you are such a fascinating character, and I think you're the sailor. You know, this is a conversation with the sailor.
Okay.
So I want to maybe next time too. We can also walk around your boat. You can
Yeah,
really
we
kind
can
of
do a tour.
go into some details because I think there's some people who are really into that might love that. Not that this is about other people; it's really about us. But I
Yeah.
like going around your boat. Let's keep this selfish. I
No,
like
all
seeing.
right. I mean, I will say that I get so used to being on the boat and the life that I forget that it's foreign to most folks. The idea of when I'm being cynical, um, I compare it to, it's just a floating. It's like living in a trailer park on the water. But like then I quickly remember that, like you can't sail away to Morocco if you're living in a fucking trailer in a trailer park, and I can sail away to Morocco.
You quickly remember that you are a romantic.
Exactly. God, you're in my see that Venn diagram, man. Man, maybe we share the two boobs. Maybe our Venn diagram overlap is so big there is no pussy shaped. It's just like two boobs mashed into one. Maybe you and I are just a circle.
But I don't want them to be mashed into one. I want
No,
you.
neither do I. That's
Yeah.
boring.
Yeah.
I gotta live with me. I don't need to live with somebody just like me. That'd be dumb. That'd be dumb.
But
Even though
maybe this is you living with yourself.
might be. We are two bald, unshaven white guys. You're a much better athlete than I am. That's how I know that we're not the same. Although you might just be a manifestation of my subconscious desire. All right, for all you viewers out there, I'm talking about solipsism. Go look it up if you don't know what it is. David Butterworth's just a figment of my imagination. Go look up solipsism. That's what I'm talking about. Anyway.
Yeah,
All right.
therefore I'm not as a figment of your imagination. I am not going away unless you decide in your imagination to put me away.
No, I enjoy you too much, man. You're too much of a wild man. Does anybody I think we neglected, if anybody actually watches this, we neglected to mention a very important fact, which is that you and I have known each other for 25 years.
Yes.
We've known each other since we were 12 years old, in 7th grade.
I admired then your ability to write, and what you wrote about that I remember most is your analysis of Nietzsche.
Yeah, I need to read that. You apparently have a copy of that.
I have a copy of it in my garage.
I need to read that so I can shake my head at either what a blowhard or a brilliant or both I used to be at 12. Yeah, I always admired. Well, you're an insane person, but which I admired, but also your physical, your athletic ability. Playing basketball against you is painful, man. Like physically painful. Like you have like 19 elbows, and they're always like in your ribs, and like my ribs, not your ribs. And your ability to fit many apples in a backpack, all in an individual brown paper bag. Many
that got forgotten about.
13.
That
There was many.
Many months.
Yes.
Later,
yeah. I mean,
I decided I was going to pull out.
Those apples represented a good portion of the school year. Like they were a representation of time. You had an apple clock. You had the first iWatch. There you go. You had the first iWatch in your backpack. Just we didn't know it then. Analog. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is good. We actually didn't talk because we're just doing our life thing.
Yeah.
We didn't talk for a while. You were doing your thing. I was doing my thing, and
Many
that's just
years.
how it goes. And I love things like this where we can come together after however many years, like a dozen years, I'm sure.
Quite some time.
And then just be like, oh hey, what's up?
Yeah. Like, and now we talk.
And then it's just
now we talk like every week, and send dick pics and shit, drawings, not photos, drawings. I still manage.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that.
Yes. Well,
we are not sending dick pics back and forth to each other.
I mean, we could, but we haven't. there is a connotation. I mean, a dick pic has become a symbol of something. Which is weird in our American modern culture, and it's not something I really want to be a part of. It's not that I don't want to send it to you. Ironically, if I did want to send it to anybody, it would probably be to you. I don't want to send one to anybody.
No, nor do I.
Yeah, like
I just don't.
It's very uncouth, and I'm uncouth. But there's certain lines even I don't want to draw, and dick pics are I don't want to cross, and dick pics are one of them.
Well, it's also not creative anymore.
Yeah, very derivative.
It's
very derivative. Played out.
Although the drawing of a penis that you drew on the feature on an iPhone iMessage where
totally
you can
different
draw,
story.
That's and hilarious. with an arm that comes out and waving, that was pretty funny.
Right.
I thought
right, and that's the irony is that a drawing of a dick is great, hilarious, like eternally funny humor. Dick pic, it's no good. It's no good. No good. Anyway, so let's make part 2 interesting. Tour of the boat, maybe. Further discussion of weird things.
Sounds amazing. Yeah, it sounds amazing. I leave these conversations, Luke, bittersweet, right? Well, no, mostly just bitter because I want to keep talking.
Right.
Sweet in the sense that I have this kind of faith, I guess, that we'll just pick it up next time. And
we will. I would say faith, except that we know it, so it's just we just know, you know. Yeah. Whether it's next week or a few days from now or the week after next, we will probably.
Yeah, more like trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whatever word.
One of those things.
Whatever word we want to use, which just is just a word.
So. I have a personal dislike of the word faith, but I don't need to get on that soapbox at the moment.
Well, I like the line. I don't know where I read this. Maybe Alan Watts or something that like faith in anything is really the opposite of faith, because if you have faith in something, you're literally trusting yourself to the unknown, which is kind of so if you're grabbing onto something, that's not faith. That's
right.
Something like that.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Faith is very contradictory. I don't. There's not enough time for me to mount that particular soapbox right now, but faith is very problematic for me. One of the themes that you and I have always talked about is how subjective truth is, how requiring of context every truth is, so even though I think it's a given, sometimes I really do try to remind myself when I make a statement like faith is problematic. I got to remind myself that it's problematic for me,
right?
For everybody,
right.
That's a truth that I've found. But
well, even like sometimes like Shaylin will be like, "This soup is hot," and I'll be like, "To you," right. And she'll be like. Actually, we actually use that in our speech a lot now because it's just become such a that subjective element is we think valuable because we treat each other better that way. Like we don't argue about I like pizza or I like broccoli. Well, no, I like or let's say I don't know. I'm kind of butchering this, but no, well, you like broccoli right now. You think broccoli might taste good to you right now. But later on, it just eliminates a lot of stupid quarreling, I think. But then also sometimes she'll be like, well, do I really need to say that? It's hot to me right now. And it's well, no, you don't. But some people might not get it.
I mean, I think that's one of those fun, I'm going to say games, but that sounds belittling, and I don't mean it belittling. Fun, a mental gymnastic to engage in every so often. It sounds that way to me right now. you know, where, put it this way, when we've got Castle Butterdog going, I'm going to very much like the fact that I will occasionally not eat with you, because if I had to go through that with every fucking meal together, I'd be like, this plate is coming at your head right now. And like, maybe not the first time or the third time or the 12th time, but eventually I'd be like, this soup is hot to me right now. Let's find out how fucking hot it is to you as I pour it down your pants. Because it might not be hot on your tongue. Let's see if it's fucking hot on your balls. Which is probably why married men and women should not live together for the sake of the marriage, because shit like that can get on each other's nerves. But
yeah, and you probably you probably know me and well enough, and Shaylin has learned me well enough at this point to know that I can get a little obsessive about things. So
you do, you do,
or at least I have shown at times historically to this point.
Right.
Maybe.
Yes. To you.
I might be a different person in 5 minutes.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things that overall is celebration worthy. I think it should be celebrated. I think who you are is, and not everybody is. I mean, this is one of those instances where not every baby is cute, and not everybody is worthy of being celebrated. Absolutely. You know, I think who you are is worthy of celebration. You know, our bromance continues. You think I'm fascinating, and I think you're worthy of being celebrated.
Likewise, which is why I wanted to record you.
Yeah, but
the other people like Shaylin and Bricks and the other 5 people who watch this are gonna.
Who knows what they're gonna think? Hopefully they can get over our bromance and they can like pay attention to some of the substance in the meat, and not just the delicious bro sauce.
Yeah, the smiling and giggling.
Right. That's right. They can get past the delicious Haagen-Dazs. No, it's not Haagen-Dazs. Hollandaise bro sauce. That's fucking sprayed all over the steak of our relationship, and then get to the meat. Hopefully, you like that? I like that metaphor.
There's some great symbolism going on right now. Just
sexual and weird.
This world.
I like it. Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I think it speaks to the wonderful, contradictory, paradoxical nature of us as human beings, that I can absolutely acknowledge you being worthy of celebration while also knowing that there are times when you're just going to annoy the fuck out of me. And that's okay. That's fine. That is fine.
I talked with my buddy, a philosopher at Fordham University, and he brought up Nietzsche's eternal recurrence. Okay. I think we've talked about that a little bit. It's this idea that like if you're going to celebrate one thing in life, you absolutely have to accept.
Yes.
This is a challenge. It's not necessarily very easy to do. Everything. Right. You have to take then so if you're going to celebrate me, you got to take the annoying part.
And I do.
Too.
I do accept it. But I also accept that my reaction doesn't always have to be a celebratory one. You know, if my celebrating you is a reaction to your awesomeness, then I must also accept my other reactions to everything else about you. See, the problem with many philosophers, Nietzsche included, Ayn Rand definitely, is to be effective, they really had to speak in extremes. You know, to effectively communicate their ideas, they had to speak in impractical extremes, like the statement that to celebrate something, you must accept everything about it. You know, that's a wonderful working concept, but it's not a very practical one. You know, it's not. It's this wonderful ideal that when you meet somebody that you love enough to want to marry them, that you say, I love everything about you. But the practical, you know, truth is that you ain't going to love everything about them. And that's okay. That's
right.
the bigger, excuse me, that's the bigger lesson, I think, that deserves to be acknowledged, is that the things that you dislike end up becoming a moot point. They end up both mattering and not mattering once you have committed to a relationship with something. You know, I celebrate David Butterworth. David Butterworth loves Shaylin. I guarantee there are things about Shaylin that David Butterworth sometimes is irritated with. There are definitely things about David Butterworth that I'm sometimes irritated with. But do those really matter? No, they don't. It's okay to be irritated. The irritation's not personal.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and maybe being able to cross the bridge into the land of like, yeah, what you're doing right now is irritating the hell out of me.
Right.
Instead of you're irritating.
How about
you irritate me. Because then it's this process
or you could
evolving, you know, like in 5 minutes I've moved on to, and I love your guts.
Right. Or how about this one? You know, this was something I learned in marriage counseling. Instead of you're irritating the fuck out of me, I'm irritated right now. Maybe my irritation is my issue.
Yeah.
Like maybe I should be fucking irritated. Maybe
and in most I jump on that because in my history, most of the time when I am irritated with someone, it is that has nothing to do with them.
No, right.
Nothing.
It's almost always something going on with me.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Because many times the things that could irritate us, if you're in a good place, they don't. Like if you're in a good place emotionally and mentally, and like you're good with everything in the world around you, you can just let that shit slide, no big fucking deal. If it does irritate you, a lot of times that's an indication that you got something going on.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
it was one of, and there were a bunch of things, but it was one of the things that was good that I took away from marriage counseling. That didn't save the marriage, but probably a good thing. Was I statements versus you statements. You know, it all starts. You know, our reactions to things all begin with us.
Yeah.
You know, many times they are not appropriate to the thing that we're reacting to. At least a lot of the negative ones. A lot of the positive ones are, or maybe they should be more positive, you know, than they already are. But a lot of the negative ones, a lot of that negativity is from an internal spring.
Oh yeah.
Not the problem of the target of irritation.
Oh yeah. Well, what's that? There's some. I think many people have said it, but like we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are.
Right.
And, I mean, that's
there
you go.
Yep.
There we go.
Yep. Everything's colored. Everything's subjective, buddy. Everything's subjective.
I'm gonna put on my glasses as I've already been donning them in some way or another, and hit it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit the bike and head out on the trails.
Get on the bike. I got split pea and ham soup to make. This is a seasonal shift for me. I'm putting away my summer menu and I'm starting my winter menu of bachelor foods. So I got split pea and ham soup to make. So you go home to Shaylin, whom I have so far very responsibly not sent any inappropriate texts. Cross my heart. I haven't. It was a struggle. Fucking struggle, but I haven't. I've been entirely a gentleman.
You're such a good dude. No, you're so intelligent, and you're such a good dude.
I'm a horrible person.
No, hey, I'm that other part of you, so let me have that side.
Appreciate
it. At least give your figment a chance to speak.
It's good. True. It's true. Good point. You're right.
You're right. Anyway, you're thought of very fondly by Shaylin and Brixton.
Yeah.
You made a really nice, really sweet video for them. I'm glad they enjoyed it. About your boat and taking them on a virtual tour. They loved that. And I heard that Shaylin responded to your text probably after you went to sleep last night.
Yeah.
And she showed me her response and what you wrote, and it's so cool. I mean, I thought her response was kind of funny, I think, and
yeah, she actually made like a semi-dick joke, which I thought was like ironic.
Me
And, like,
too.
was,
I
like,
thought it was
struggling-
too. Yeah.
I was like struggling not to, and she did,
Yep.
and like it upended my whole world,
Yep.
man. Fucked my whole world. I'm like, should I have made a dick joke? Fuck.
Right. When I read her response, because she wanted to show me, she was excited to share the conversation, which I thought was cool in itself. And then I knew right away. I was like, she got him with that one. Like,
oh, she totally did. Because like I was like, all right, I'm gonna be an adult. I'm gonna be a mensch. There's the Yiddish word of the day, mensch. I'm gonna be a mensch. I'm gonna be an adult. I'm gonna be a gentleman. I'm not gonna fucking, like send her a drawing of a fucking dick that has a little voice bubble that says, "Hi, David says keep on doing your thing." Because I went, hey, I got his message across. Nope, not gonna do that. I'm just gonna send her the message and be polite and nice. She doesn't know me. This is some dude's wife. It's gonna be a good dude. And what does she do? She makes a dick joke at me.
yeah,
maybe she's in the Venn diagram too. Maybe she's in the Venn diagram too.
Love that.
It's always weird. It's like, well, this is some guy's wife. This is my buddy's wife.
Yeah.
Like, how do I like find out if she's cool, man?
Yeah.
Like, how do I break that dick joke barrier? Like, can I make dick jokes? Like, maybe she had to make the first one to let me know, like, hey, implicitly, it's cool. It's cool.
She's pretty witty, and I don't think I give her time, or maybe sometimes I give her the space to exhibit her wittiness and her creativity in language. But sometimes, man, she blows me away. And sometimes it's with me, but sometimes it's when I see her interacting with other people, I really see it.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, I love that.
I mean, I thought that was very witty, the whole, like, see the boat in the wood thing, because, boats aren't made of flesh, so you can't say in the flesh. I thought it was very witty. I like that, in the wood.
Yeah.
And then she's like, wood. Like, basically doing, like, a Beavis and Butthead impression, but not. Like, spicy. That's some spice. That's spice. I do like spice.
Yeah.
Spicy burritos.
I figured you were going to love that. Yeah.
Fucking burritos, man. All right, man. Get on your bike. Get on your bike. Get out of here. We'll do part 2. All right,
I'll see you next week or whatever.
Yep. I'll try.
All right.
I'll try not to have any more finger condoms next time you see me. Or I might have more. Who knows?
Or one less finger.
Bite. Ooh. As long as it's not on this hand, this is my working hand. I'm not ambidextrous.
Go lift some weights or do yoga on a fence or something.
It's already done. My workout's done for the day. I did yoga. I did physical therapy. I fucking went diving. Not fun, but it's still a workout. I get to be lazy the rest of the day.
Enjoy the night.
Yep. All right, buddy. Have a good ride home. I'll talk to you when I do.
Amazing.
Peace.
Later.